Hello and welcome to the first live episode of the Through Ball podcast. For any of our regular listeners, you can now finally put faces to names and voices. Uh, that's Anmol in the black T-shirt and crazy beard, apart from me with the crazy beard. That is Kiran in the incredibly baggy Arsenal shirt, and that is Sejal with a massive grin on her face. And you guys will be hosted today by me, Adi. I don't think I can say much more about myself. I'll let everybody else compliment me later. So, anyway, as you guys know, this is a preview of the Uruguay-England game. This is also kind of a soft run, so anyone who's watching, please let us know you're on the event page or on the YouTube link. You can send in comments just as feedback for the rest of us. And if you've got anything specific in terms of, I don't know, if you have like a football-related question about how we think Suarez will play or what the formations are or whatnot, we'll be monitoring that. So it'd be great to hear from you guys. And meanwhile, we are good to go. So, guys, Uruguay-England.
I'm supporting England.
Shall I start?
Okay,
I'm supporting England.
that's helpful. I think Anmol's trying to say he's supporting England.
I'm supporting. Well, I don't know who I'm supporting, but I would say England because there's a lot of Arsenal players involved. But all in all, I'm just hoping for a really nice end-to-end game because it is make or break for the group.
Yeah, and that is what we're looking for, right? I mean, we were surprised, I think, by the England-Italy game. In that, I mean, I know I thought it was going to be like a boring 0-0 draw with a lot of sort of faffing around and passing the ball with no real intent, and we got something completely different. We got actual attacking play, and we want more of the same this time.
Exactly. I mean, it was kind of surprising how fast England got off the blocks. It is a young side, the likes of Sterling, Barkley, Lallana, all these Henderson, lot of runners, lot of pace, and it was good to see some sort of enterprise from them.
Okay. Meanwhile, Anmol's doing something really weird with his eyebrows. I think that means he wants to talk.
Yes, that's what I do when I want to talk. No, but well, if starting quickly off the blocks is starting 25 minutes later, that's not quite what will work against a team that's all attack. Like England's attack is capable of handling Uruguay's defense very comprehensively. But the problem that I see coming up is the fact that England isn't clinical enough to finish off the chances they'll make. Sorry, can you hear me?
Anmol, I couldn't catch the last bit. You were saying something of the problems that you think England could have.
Yeah. What I was basically talking about was that I think England won't be clinical enough to finish off a relatively weaker Uruguayan side. Like England does create wonderful chances, but England isn't this. If Italy is any example, England isn't likely to finish those chances. Uruguay gets 3 chances, Suarez will bury all 3.
Yeah, and I mean that was a big issue with the Italy game. Rooney had a great chance and he missed it, and I mean there were a couple of other maybe half chances. But on the flip side, I mean Uruguay are coming off a really shocking result in terms of firstly no one expected it, and secondly that second half against Costa Rica. I mean that was a poor half. They were nowhere going forward, no creativity. I think Cavani. Essentially, from what I've seen of Cavani play, it's almost like there's a good Cavani and a bad Cavani, and you get both in the same game. Like for 10 minutes he'll be good Cavani, for 10 minutes he'll be bad Cavani. And I think for a lot of that second half, you ended up getting the bad version. I don't know. I mean, Sejal, I think you were watching that Uruguay-Costa Rica game.
Yeah, I did, but I think Cavani has been hot and cold even for PSG. I don't think they've seen good Cavani consistently. They've just been seeing good Cavani, bad Cavani on and off. And I think I'd kind of disagree with Anmol there because I think England's defense has been quite decent. We could see that in the game against Italy. It wasn't a slow-paced game as all of us expected it to be. And I think Cahill and Jagielka did manage pulling off a good partnership there.
Yeah, I think Cahill and Jagielka were actually pretty solid. I mean, I don't think there was much more they could have done with the two goals. I think
the goals were so flawless, both of them. There was no defensive fault as such.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with the second second one, I think it was just a fantastic cross and a great lead by Balotelli to get ahead of the defense and get that get, jump over everyone. And with the first one, I mean, it's I think one of the best corner kick routines I've seen with Italy. The dummy that Pirlo pulled off and then Marchisio shot.
Well, I think basically Italy won the midfield battle over there. You had Pirlo just being Pirlo over there. He ran. He didn't look much like he was running around the place a lot, but he did play a key role in both the goals. Mopped up a lot, and he actually uses this ethic quite well of using possession to kill opponent teams. The way when he gets the ball, it's very difficult to get it off him, and he always seems to find some teammate or the other in small pockets of space here and there. So I think that is where England struggled to match Italy because, quite frankly speaking, Gerrard and Henderson. Gerrard is a great player, but I don't think they were able to match up to the class of Pirlo. I think that's another factor that might play a big part tonight because the England midfield will have learned, hopefully, its lessons against Italy and they'll look to apply something new, a little more graft, a little more hard work against Uruguay.
The other thing with in that regard is the fact that Uruguay don't really have anyone the caliber of Pirlo who can pick a different part and control the game the way Pirlo does. I mean that's a team that's essentially it's focused around getting the ball as quickly as possible to the attacking three and then seeing how things work from there.
Fair enough, but Adi, to be fair here, there's no other team in the world that has a playmaker, deep line playmaker with the quality of Pirlo.
No, absolutely. What I meant to say is, like, for example, I mean, you saw Netherlands against Spain in the way that De Jong, Schneider, and Blind controlled that midfield for a good part of a good part of the first half and most of the second half. Similarly, in Spain's history over the last 7 or 8 years, you would have seen how the Spanish midfield controls, regardless. I mean, even people like Sergio Busquets, who's not among the most talented midfielders around, but he plays a big part in helping Xavi and Iniesta keep control of the ball and the possession. And Uruguay, I mean, their game is built differently. It's built on a counter-attacking. Let's get the ball up to Suarez and Cavani as quickly as possible, and then I mean everyone joins in later, rather than trying to pass the ball and kill opponents through their passing.
If 2013-14 have shown us anything, it's the fact that counter-attacking football has finally started thrashing possession-based football. Like everywhere where you see possession-focused football, you notice that counter-attacking teams, good counter-attacking teams, are the ones that beat them. So even if Uruguay ends up getting, let's say, 5 shots on towards goal, if they bury 3 of them, this is match in hand. Again, I'm rooting for England, but complacency in the English defense or in the English attack could very well cost them this game.
I think more than complacency, it's just the fact that we are so used to watching England choke so regularly all the time that even though we're supporting England, we know that somewhere down the line, something will go wrong for them. Some red card might happen, and something will just fall apart for England.
Yeah, I mean, there is always that likelihood of someone screwing it up for England. Although, I mean, you see that the interesting stat I found along the lines of red cards is at the last 2 World Cups, the first person to get sent off was a Uruguay player, and then obviously we had the second sending off that Uruguay had in the last World Cup when Suarez did his magic hand of God impersonation, stopping that penalty, stopping that goal. But I think, I mean, Uruguay is just as likely probably to do something. I don't know if implosive is the right word, but do something to screw their own chances.
Well, if that's the condition, I think Suarez is equally likely to do something screwed up for his team and essentially create some problems for them.
A player doesn't have to necessarily go wrong. Like what happened with Rooney when Ronaldo kind of dived and pretended to get hurt. It doesn't have to be the player who's at fault to get a red card. It can be other external forces as well. And I think that's been England's luck so far, even against Germany, where the goal went in, but the referee didn't see it. So the luck factor has always played against England.
So
I
are we
think
seeing at
I
some
think
point in time
tactically approaching this game, basically you have two teams who will basically play to both their strengths. You'll have Uruguay with a really good forward line, and they look to just get the ball up to them as fast as possible. And you have England, who for the first time in a long time have a lot of players with really good technical ability. I mean, England look a lot more comfortable with the ball than I've seen them for a long time actually. So I think it'll actually be, I mean, Uruguay will obviously be looking to counter, as Anmol said, but England needs to work hard tonight. They need to shut down those spaces. They need to they need to choke off and cut off the supply to Suarez and Cavani. And most importantly, they need to keep the ball. They really need to play possession. Otherwise, like Anmol said, with the caliber up front, Uruguay can really hurt them. And of course, like we said, there's a lot of factors you can't really expect a red card from somewhere. You have characters with high tempers. You have Rooney, who's in indifferent form. You have Suarez, who has previous with incidents on field, and Uruguay have already seen a red card. So it might just be an ill-tempered encounter, and it might be decided by a freak red card or a freak foul. But let's just hope it doesn't come to that.
Yeah, no, and you, in the middle that you mentioned Rooney and Suarez, and I think we'll get to them a bit later. The one thing that both of you have pointed out, both you and Anmol have pointed out, is is the style of play that Uruguay will play in terms of counter-attacking. And what I find interesting about that is that England aren't used to playing with the majority of the ball.
Exactly.
I mean, what I've seen of them in a lot of games, and I think the Italy game was the first time I saw it differently. But if you're saying that England are going to have more possession than Uruguay, then I would be quite interested in seeing how that would work out, because it's not a team it's not a really possession-based team. It's a pacey attacking team. And if Uruguay are going to cede the possession, then some of that advantage goes, because if there's a defensive line, then there's only so much your pace can do. But at some point in time, you're going to end up hitting a wall.
Yeah, but then I just see that I don't see Uruguay having the necessary quality in midfield to actually hassle England off the ball. As far as I see it, Uruguay might just be sitting back, waiting for England to attack either through the wings or through the middle, through their midfield, cutting off the ball and just playing very direct right to Suarez or Cavani and attacking right off the front. So I don't see them making much use of their midfield as much as England would actually.
No, I would agree. Yeah, Anmol and Sejal, would you guys have anything to add to that?
Well,
Yeah, I agree with Kiran. Their defense kind of let them down, other than the midfield, in the game against Costa Rica. I mean, Gordon did not really look like anything like the way he was for the what he was at Atletico Madrid. I mean, this was just shocking.
Yeah, I would agree actually. I think we had spoken about this on one of our podcast podcast episodes earlier. That while Gordon's a great defender, he does lack in pace, and I think that is what Costa Rica were able to take advantage of all across the board. The lack of pace on the Uruguayan defense. And I mean, Anmol, I don't know what you would have to say about Uruguay's defensive vulnerabilities as such. Given what we saw in the Costa Rica game and what we've seen of them before.
no, I understand the toughest task they had on their hands since the last World Cup. But the problem that I see coming is that if England gets riled up very easily, so a few nasty tackles here and there, a few shots missed, England might do half the job for your defense.
You're saying, sorry, England might have a worse defense?
No, I'm saying, oh, sorry, okay, you can't hear me. All right. What I'm saying was that Uruguay essentially has a decent defense, but not one that will be able to tackle England.
Right.
So over a period of time, the problem that I see coming up is a few nasty tackles and a few occasional, say, shots off target. England will get riled up and will not be able to attack, as efficiently, and that will do half the job for Uruguay's defense.
That's true. Yeah, no. And Kiran, just go back to a point you mentioned earlier. You said something along the lines of both teams would play to their strengths, which I mean normally would sound like a pretty obvious thing to say. But one of the refreshing things about England is that England's play these days is that whereas maybe a year ago England would have played not to their own strengths but to limit the other team's strengths, and now you see them actually coming out, expressing themselves. And what would you put that down to? I mean, given that Hodgson was usually considered a conservative manager, where do you think that this change has come from?
Well, I think
Uh,
basically, given that Hodgson was considered a very typical appointment by the FA, people didn't really expect him to be any sort of revolutionizing new coach or something like that. But I think the youthfulness of the squad maybe, and the presence of, like I said, so many technically good players in Sterling, in Lallana, in Barkley, in Wilshere, in Chamberlain and Henderson. All these players are very different from the kind of English players that we usually saw come through the ranks. I mean, hard work, industry, and grit were usually seen as the hallmark of most players who stepped up and made it to the England squad. But these young guys, they're actually showing a lot of something that isn't normally associated with England, and that is flair. So I think when a player is technically that good, I think they're bound to be a little bit more enterprising, and it was quite a pleasant surprise to see England actually go ahead, try to take the initiative. I mean, at the end of the match against Italy, you really couldn't fault England for once. So there was nothing to blame the defeat on. It was just that Italy just edged it on the day. But it was a very pleasant surprise from England, and I really hope they continue to play that.
Yeah, no, I mean it's something to look forward to. Moving on, we've touched upon this a few times. The key players, Rooney and Suarez, and I'll get to Suarez first. Um, I think it has to be the biggest question in my mind is his fitness. I mean, if he's coming off an injury, and there are rumors that he's essentially only really playing because it's a must-win game for them, and he's not maybe at 100% fitness. And I just want to know what you guys would think, about that. How much of an impact his fitness will have. Sejal, I'll throw this one over to you first.
Yeah, I think you could see from the time he came on for the Uruguay game, he wasn't quite comfortable. So if he's starting tonight, we'll have to just wait and watch if he's going to have the same kind of pace and the same kind of partnership with Cavani, who is equally failing. So the funny part is that the Liverpool partnership is actually going to be completed on the field today. There's Sturridge, there's Suarez, and there's uh, Sterling, who's going to be there. So
Yeah.
it's going to be quite interesting to watch them, play against somebody who they had such a great partnership with this season.
No, absolutely. Kiran, I mean, going back to the fitness question, I mean, you must have seen the Germany Portugal game, and given it was the big game of the group stages for Portugal, and so you felt that Ronaldo had to play, and he wasn't at full fitness. It was pretty clear, even though he was still by far the best player for Portugal that day. He was maybe playing at 60 or 70%, and again, the worry is. Can Suarez be as explosive as he usually is? Do you expect it, I mean, do you expect him to have as hampered a game as Ronaldo did for Portugal?
But see, the basic thing is, I think no matter, I mean, if Ronaldo was operating closer to 60% full fitness, it was a mistake to trot him out to the match against Germany, because when you look at it realistically, that was a match that Germany was always going to edge. I feel, at least I feel that way. But then again, this here tonight, Uruguay isn't left with much choice. I mean, if Luis Suarez isn't fit, you just stick him on and hope he lasts the 90 minutes, because you're going to, Lord knows you're going to need him when you don't have a really good midfield to supply their strikers. I mean, of course, you have Cavani, but then like we discussed, he's hot and he's cold every now and then. So if we see bad Cavani rather than good Cavani coming on tonight, so the Uruguay really need Suarez to step up. So I think it is a big question about his fitness, but all good strikers adapt to that, and a finisher like him, I don't see it impacting his game enough to make him anyway irrelevant to the course of the match. Him being on the team sheet is still a huge boost for Uruguay.
Fair enough. And you said something. You said something along the lines of Suarez has to step up. Now, Anmol, we've spoken on the podcast before about how Suarez, while is a brilliant talent and has an ability to create something out of nothing, almost magically in a football sense, he does at times tend to underperform in the biggest on the biggest stage. At least you and I were both of this opinion. And right now for Uruguay, this is the biggest stage. So how do you see that working out? I mean, how do you see him dealing with the pressure of this occasion?
Well, it's very difficult to predict what Suarez will or will not do because it's always been difficult to predict what Suarez will or will not do. But over and above that, the core concern that arises is the fact that well, a 60% Suarez is still better than a 100% fit Diego Forlan. So that choice is really not that difficult at this point of time, especially considering how badly Forlan played in the last game. Over and above that, well, this is his moment. This is his time. He's not going to get a better chance than this to get rid of the big match focus. I think he'll perform, but not enough to take Uruguay through.
Yeah, okay. I mean, along the same lines, I'm going to just throw out some stats to you, all three of you. Now, in the 6 games for Liverpool that were you would consider the biggest games of their season, essentially the games against the rest of the top 4. Suarez ended up having in all the games against Arsenal, Chelsea, and Man City. Suarez ended up not scoring a single goal and only having 2 assists in those 6 games. And I mean, I don't know. The first time I discovered this, I thought it was a pretty surprising stat to see that he wasn't influencing those games as much as he was influencing other games. And Kiran, I'll throw this one back to you. I mean, what did you say there? Do you think there is a performance deficiency when it comes to Suarez at the absolute when he's needed at the absolute most?
Well, I think quite clearly, as soon as Suarez came back from that suspension to immediately score in the Premier League, every team identified him as Liverpool's main attacking threat and sought out to mark him. And in matches, I mean, each team had their own tactic to deal with Suarez, and it worked to a great extent with the bigger teams simply because of the quality of the players they had to carry out those tactics. I mean, in the sense, Chelsea straight up double marked him. Arsenal cut off his midfield supply at home at least, and of course, paid special attention to him. He couldn't do much against City either because that is one heavy set midfield over there, who was always that was always swarming all around him. So I think again England will look to have a separate game plan for Luis Suarez, but it really is something that he will eventually overcome. I feel. I mean, he's used to it. Every great striker has always gone through it. You right down from Eric Cantona to Thierry Henry to Nistelrooy to Rooney to now Suarez. Every great striker has been marked, double marked, triple marked by teams looking to snuff him out. So there are 2 advantages to this. One being if the opponents are so focused on one player that leaves other players, in this case people like Cavani, to actually go out and have a good showing. Now that there's not so much pressure on them. Secondly, it offers Suarez a sort of bridge for stepping up rather. Like I said, all those names of great strikers that I mentioned earlier, they found ways to adapt, and I think Suarez will do that also. And then again, I also feel, quite simply put, I don't think England have the necessary ability to man mark Suarez while also paying sufficient attention to Cavani. So in that regard, England would do well to pay heed to Suarez returning, but then again, they shouldn't focus their entire game plan on him. I think he will have a good game.
Okay. Sejal, Kiran said something along the lines of how a lot of great strikers tend to struggle mainly because of the fact that the opposing defenses are already marking. It's an obvious fact that Suarez is going to be Uruguay's most influential player. Therefore, England's defense will focus on him. And you mentioned earlier how you think Jagielka and KL have now sort of made the step up in terms of being international class defenders. And I mean, both of them individually have played against Suarez multiple times in the Premier League. Do you think that with the added threat of Cavani, who won't have the pressure of leading the line on his own, do you think that Jagielka and Cahill are up to the task of keeping Uruguay out, and Suarez in particular?
It'll definitely be tough. In spite of having a hot and cold season, Cavani can still pull some surprises. Uh, that does not discount his talent at all. But I think if they could contain like the Italy game, the attack Italy had. I mean, they had Balotelli, they had Pirlo, they had such good players, and they did a decent job there. And I think it wasn't just them. Defensively, even like Gerard and everybody contributed a lot. So I don't think it should be a problem to kind of contain a 60-70% Suarez and Cole Cavani.
Okay, so I mean, if Suarez is having the fitness issues that we think he is, then you think England's defense should be able to cope with it?
Yeah, I think they should.
Okay. Anmol, I mean, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, first, can you hear me this time around?
Yes, we can hear you. Although now Anmol has disappeared for temporarily. So, sorry guys, bear with us. This is our first time in technological issues. Plus, Anmol's been having this issue for the last 2 hours. I don't know why. Yeah. So, okay, moving on then. And when Anmol comes back, I'll pose that question to him. The key player on the other side, and a lot has been said about Wayne Rooney over the last 3-4 days, ever since the Italy game. There is that famous statistic about how he's never scored at a World Cup, and in fact, the cross that he laid on for Sturridge's goal was the first time he even had an assist at a World Cup. So, yeah, and of course, a lot of the debate has come down to where his position should be. I mean, he played that game on the wide left role, and now all the evidence is that he'll have a more central role this time around. But is today the day that Wayne Rooney finally breaks his duck? Not just in terms of goals, but in terms of an actual performance, and team performance. Sejal, at the moment it is only you and me, so I will not do this out to you.
Oh, okay. No, I think it's a little unfair, the kind of criticism Rooney is getting. I think he's just shown his dedication not only to England but even United. You put him forward, he plays forward. You put him on the wing, he'll play on the wing. You put him in the middle, a little deeper in the midfield, he does that. He does crib a little, but it's not straight out of the horse's mouth. It's all just media created. So you have to give him credit. You can't expect him to maintain his consistency when you're shifting him around the field so much. I mean, how is he going to find his comfort position and then kind of find a wavelength with a striker or with a midfield partner if you keep shifting him around?
I mean, I see what you mean. The fact that he keeps getting shifted around, and him, despite being supposedly the most talented player on the team, he's the one who ends up having to sacrifice his positioning and do a job that no one else is willing to do or no one else can do. But at the same time, if you look at it historically, I mean, for example, the last World Cup, and he'd come off that he went into the 2010 World Cup with possibly his best season till date for Manchester United. He'd scored 29 or 28 goals. United fell 1 point short of the title, and Rooney. And then when he went into the World Cup with the role that he supposedly enjoys playing the most, he was the main striker. All of the attacking play was supposedly on him, and yet he still failed to deliver in that tournament. So, do you think it's just a matter of him being misused in terms of his positioning and his and the way they set out to play, or is there just, I don't know if it's psychological or if it's something along the lines of Kiran saying about Rooney being marked out by the other team, but clearly there seems to be somewhat of a performance gap when it comes to Wayne Rooney at World Cups.
I think it's both. You're going to mark Rooney. Rooney is one of the strongest players that day. You're definitely going to mark him. So yeah, I think what Kiran said does make sense. I think it could be a combination of both as well.
Kiran, we're talking about Wayne Rooney at the moment, and good to have you back. Yeah, essentially the fact that he, still hasn't been able to perform at the highest stage for England, and I mean the other interesting stat I'd point out is he's the leading goal scorer for England in when it comes to World Cup qualifying.
Qualifiers, yeah.
Yeah, but when it comes to the World Cup itself, the World Cup proper, he ends up not performing to the level he'd expect. And where do you think the deficiency comes from? Because I was just saying this to Sejal, the last World Cup he came to the last World Cup on the back of his best season for United, and yet he completely flopped at that tournament.
Yeah, well, I think what people don't take into consideration is that he came into 2006 and 2010 on the back of pre-tournament injuries that really hampered his performance, I feel. Sure, he did have really great form during 2010, but I think basically, first of all, that squad was not one that really suited his style of play. It was a very dark, very unimaginative squad that relied too much on him to provide both creativity and goals. I think this time round, he's had a really bad season with Manchester United, as has been well documented. But he has turned it around also. He's often been United's lone. He's often been the only guy for United who looks as though he actually gives some sort of concern about the situation, so to speak. So I think the game against Italy was a nightmare, bar the assist, which he did really well to just hand on a plate to Sturridge. But I think he'll do well again. He's bound to score. I mean, if you look at the stats in that way, Tim Cahill, Australia, has more goals than Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Wayne Rooney combined.
Yeah.
In World Cups.
That was one of the craziest stats I saw.
Exactly. So all it goes to show is you can't really judge a player's form based on 1-2 month event that happens in once in 4 years. I mean, there are form fluctuations. There are teams that you play against. I'm not making excuses for Rooney or Ronaldo or Messi, but as they proved time and time again, year after year with their clubs, they are players of a certain caliber, and that is a very high caliber. So I think it's more down to just coincidence of freak bad luck that he hasn't really managed to make any sort of impact back in 2006 and 2010. Like I said, in 2006 he had that horrible, that famed metatarsal injury, that infamous metatarsal injury that prevented him from performing any better. In 2010, like I said, that was one of the worst England squads that I've seen. Right now he has a brilliant team, and by all accounts he should be doing really well. Seeing as he's finally surrounded by technical players who love to pass the ball, who seem to be attacking very well. But then again, I think the tinkering that's been going on with his positional play at United has affected him slightly. He started out as an out-and-out striker, and now he's dropped deeper until he reaches very close to the midfield. I think that's the role. I think that's a transition that he's still adapting to, and it's a new thing for him as far as playing for England is concerned, because they are quite well stocked in midfield, especially central midfield. So we've seen him play somewhat in a slightly free role between the left winger and the striker, or between the right winger and the striker. Something like a drifting role where he just comes in, picks up the ball, sees if he can spot a pass or a shot. Now this is a role that is perfect for a proper out-and-out number 10. Now Rooney has only shifted to this role from an out-and-out number 9, so to speak. So I think that
transition striker to the what we would call the central attacking mid, and he's going there rather than he's gone there.
Exactly. So I think he's reached there. I think he's just about settling down to the expectations and the demands that the role brings, and he can only get better. And seeing like Sir Alex Ferguson wrote in his autobiography, he would do well to move closer to midfield as he ages, because he's not really one of those lightweight players. I mean, he's putting on the pounds. He's not going to have space for long. So he's got a fantastic footballing brain. So he would be better off slowly moving towards midfield. So we might just see a Rooney renaissance coming up soon. But for the sake of England, they better hope that the quality and caliber that he has lets him adjust to that role as soon as possible, preferably starting tonight.
Yeah. Okay.
Adi, hello?
Right. So I think we did a through Russian roulette. We eventually managed to lose Adi as well. I'm sure he'll be back, but
Yeah,
Tejas,
it's just both of us now.
yeah. So let me just take over from Adi for now until he gets back. Please come back fast. So Sejal, like I was saying, Rooney is probably still just about adapting to his new number 10 role from a striker. So which is why we've seen him off the pace. But then he was quite horrible against Italy, apart from the assist, like I said. Do you think that was a one-off game, or do you think he'll get better, or do you think England need to change his position again?
Honestly, I don't know, man. I mean, he's not just lost his favorite position at United. He also did that. I mean, that's also happened to him at England. When you have to compete with the likes of in the midfield, there's. I mean, how is he going to fit into that midfield? I don't know. Or even going forward, how is he going to compete with Sturridge, who's done quite decently for Liverpool and for England, or Sterling? You know, these are like players half his age and lots of pace, and they're not bad at all. So it's a little. I know it's unfair to blame him, but at the same time, if he's not performing, I won't be surprised if he's not picked.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, but then again, like I said, he's not exactly fitting into any set predefined positional midfield or forward bracket that we know of generally. Now, I mean, we know there's a central midfielder, there's a central attacking midfielder, there's a striker, there's a winger. But in which of these categories does Wayne Rooney actually fall into? Because as far as I see, if there's a triangle between the striker, the attacking midfielder, and the winger, right in the center of that triangle is where Wayne Rooney will be, drifting to all three positions. So
Well,
that sort of a free
In
role
the whole,
is, I mean, in the hole, probably could be in the hole, but then again, he's not even that centrally also. He's drifting back a lot more to track back and make some tackles as well. So positionally, I think he's sort of evolved into a situation, evolved into the kind of player where he's not, I don't think even he's sure exactly where he should start each match, and that's negatively affecting his form because he's
I'm a
not
bit
seeing
sad
no,
right now.
as he wants.
I'm just saying I'm feeling a little bit sad right now because
Hi, Adi.
apparently I went off the call for about a minute, and
Yeah, I
it
managed
turns
to
out I'm not indispensable. It turns out you guys can do this perfectly fine without me. That kind of I don't like that. Yeah, so I picked up with you guys saying Rooney should be playing in the hole, and I think Kiran, the last thing I heard you say was that England and Rooney in specific aren't really sure what Rooney's best role is in that setup. And I think, I mean, just to wrap up the Rooney discussion, given that we have only 10 minutes to go, why? He's been around since 2004. Why 10 years later do we not know what? I mean, if that's the case, I don't understand. Through five different, no, so you've got Sven, McLaren, Capello, and now Hodgson. So four different English managers, plus Ferguson and Moyes. Why, with six managers, do we not know what Wayne Rooney's best position is?
this is like an exam question. Nobody knows the answer to this.
Yes, best answers on the back of a postcard. I will give you your marks.
Well, there is no. I mean, see, he's had a lot to adapt to. I mean, every player goes through some sort of transition as he ages, shall I say, or as his game develops. Maybe one day after years of training, he finds out he's a better passer than a goal scorer. He turns into a midfielder. I mean, we've heard stranger things. We've had the Honduran keeper who used to be a striker until 4 years ago. So positional changes wise, I mean that's an extreme example to use, but still. So I just think Rooney was one of the few players that actually handled the intense media pressure of being England's next great hope. You know, at age 16 he made that spectacular transfer to United, and he's shown. He had a very good manager in Alex Ferguson who applied a firm firm guiding hand, and helped him through his teething troubles, so to say. So I think he's evolved from England's golden boy onto someone they rely on very much, and also to a certain degree into a sort of scapegoat whenever they do whenever anything goes wrong. So I think really because of adapting to various different lineups for the teams that he's played in, it's just a bit of a confusion in his mind where he just drifts to the left and he sees Sterling, who's got more pace. He drifts forward and he sees Sturridge, who's got better finishing. He drifts backward and he sees Gerrard, who's got a better passing range. And now he's got all three of these, but he doesn't know exactly which direction to go to. So I think he ends up dropping deeper and deeper to get the ball. And in that frustration, he's not exactly able to apply what he's really good at, which is drive forward, take shots from distance, and just be that powerhouse player that he was, that attribute that made him world famous.
Okay, we are. I mean, good to hear. I think we've had a long, substantive discussion about Wayne Rooney as the day where we finally have to see him play at his absolute best for England. But moving on, some of the key battles. The Anmol mentioned earlier about the quality that Uruguay have up front, and the fact that they play on a very counter-attacking style of play. So we've got the lineups here. The front three for Uruguay being Cavani, Lodero, and Suarez. The one thing I would have drawn as a negative from the Italy game for England was the fact that their fullbacks was susceptible to the sort of counter-attack that Anmol is saying Uruguay are capable of. And I think that puts a lot of pressure there on Leighton Baines and Glenn Johnson. And Johnson should have the experience at least of playing against Suarez over a year in training. But I mean, you can see that at least on that side, I would see Suarez getting the better of Johnson more often than not. So I mean, how do you see that battle playing out?
So probably Glenn Johnson isn't exactly the best wingback option.
Okay, we got disconnected. Anyway, back to the fullbacks getting more susceptible to Suarez. This is a very funny thing. A friend of mine brought up that Leighton Baines is only good at taking free kicks and going forward. He's not so good, while defending. So maybe I think, they'll have to just, defend for a change. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yeah, he'll be defending Cavani's side more often than not. I mean, obviously, you'd expect the attacking front line.
Looking at the lineup, I'm not quite sure what kind of width do Uruguay even have. I mean, do they? I don't think so.
No, they don't. I mean, the way they're lined up isn't a very wide. So it is. I mean, and their style of play also is a bit more narrow when they actually have the ball compared to when they're counter-attacking.
Yeah. So I mean, they will have a problem, but it won't be like England will get hammered on the wings, because I just took a look at the lineup and I don't see too much width there. And with Cavani and Suarez, who are so much more comfortable centrally, I don't know. I think it shouldn't be too much trouble.
Yeah, I think centrally England are good again because Gary Cahill is definitely one of the best defenders that we've seen this season. He's been solid in the air. He's also going to be a very good component going forward for corners and set pieces. So I think they're well stocked to deal with Cavani. It's Suarez that they need to be paying attention to. And I think a very important battle will be in midfield really, or rather out on the wing. I'm quite looking forward to see what kind of problems that Sterling will look to pose for the Uruguayan defense.
Yeah, no, we'll get to that as well. Going the other way. I think, I mean, from what Sejal was saying earlier about Leighton Baines being better at attacking than defending, the only thing I would say to that is, I think one-on-one he's a good defender. So if he's standing up to someone running at him, I've seen of him, he does a really good job every time. But the problem is with the attacking impetus he provides, and this is true of any attacking fullback. I think it is easy for Baines to be caught, and that is what Anmol was saying earlier about the counter attack, where Cavani and Suarez would be able to benefit if Baines is pushing himself up too far forward.
See, I think basically in that regard, England will look to attack as much as they can through Sterling rather than Welbeck, because in Glenn Johnson they have a potentially weak link that can be exploited by Uruguay, and in Ryan Sterling they have a winger who is more likely to go forward than track back. So I think a solid left back like Leighton Baines, who does love to attack, will need to curb his instincts and stay back a little to help out on the flank whenever Sterling goes ahead. And the same can be said on the right wing, but in the different direction, where Danny Welbeck will have to track backwards to help out Glenn Johnson deal with Luis Suarez. So I think if Uruguay can read the game well, they might just stumble onto the fact that England will most likely be using only one wing to attack, and that is whenever Sterling aligns with Johnson. Whenever Sterling aligns with Baines. So if England keep switching wings and keep varying that attack over there, it'll look for a very interesting tactical battle.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, for me that is, I think, one of the key tactical battles of the game. The way the fullbacks deal with Suarez and Cavani. On the other end, you mentioned it a few times, how Sterling and Welbeck will combine with their fullbacks to trouble the Uruguay defense. Now, Uruguay's defense at the moment has a bit of a patchwork look to it. They have a very young central defender playing, Jose Maria Hennes, who's come in because their captain Diego Lugano is injured. Now, this guy is 19 years old, and I think this is one of the first big games, if not the first big games he's playing for Uruguay. And that, I mean, you imagine Rooney running at him or Sterling running at him. It's a test of fire, as they say in the cliched way, and that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, it is quite the baptism of fire, as you said. This is the biggest stage in world football, and he's walking up and he's facing two or three world-class forwards who've got pace, who've got trickery, who've got power. So it is going to be a huge test for him, and quite crucially, it is also a perceived weak link that England will look to exploit. As far as Uruguay are concerned, they have to take solace in the fact that this guy is something of an unknown quantity, and they'll just have to wing it. I mean, they're just going to have to hope that he proves to be some sort of a surprise package. And they'll also be, I think Uruguay will also be counting on the indifferent form of Rooney.
And on the so now they've got Pereira and Martin as their feedbacks for full cover. And that handing Welbeck and Sterling, and then when Johnson overlaps, any strikers straight heading towards goal. But the play for England is going to be key. Is going to be a key. Give the players. I think looking at the entire defense for me.
Yeah. So I think we're nearing kickoff time. We should probably wrap this up. We should probably get our final predictions in.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that online, but yeah. So any the from both sides being possible weak links. We the equation both sides, and basically actually one way on Anderson with looks it's 3 midfield with a player. It's Christian Rodriguez and Henderson probably sure,
Okay.
against Italy. So I think a lot is being expected of them now.
Okay.
They're just really quickly on that.
Let's just roll our predictions. I think the anthems have started.
I actually can only hear Kiran properly right now.
Sorry, Sejal, say that again.
I
Yeah,
can
I
only
think
hear
I think he can
Kiran
hear you
properly.
now.
Oh yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah.
I just heard alien voices for the past 30 seconds.
Okay. Well, yeah. So I mean, we are running a little bit short on time. So for anyone who's been watching, thanks a lot, and please send us any of your feedback. I'll be posting up Facebook pages and G Plus pages and our Twitter handle soon enough. And yeah, just let us know. We want to do this more often. I think a lot of us have been fed up with how Sony 6 have been handling this World Cup for the last week or so. But yeah, as Kiran is pushing because he is not in front of his TV and therefore he has to end before he can start watching the match. Let's get to our questions. Sejal?
Yeah.
Okay.
What is
We'll have
happening
you-
now?
Yeah.
Huh?
We're just having a slight disturbance in the audio. So like let's just finish off with the predictions. I
Yeah,
think
Kiran.
yeah. So I think this is going to be a tight game, but I think England will just about edge it with the same score that they lost to Italy. 2-1 to England.
Something that
Okay.
Yeah. So I think we
When
lost
I
Adi
again.
again. I think
Yeah.
we lost Adi
Okay.
again. So
So I think for me it's gonna be 3-1 to England because I think England have a strong bench as well. They have Wilshere, they have Lallana, and some more. So I think Barkley's on the bench too. So I think 3-1 to England because I think by the 75th or 80th minute, if they have tired legs, they can replace them easily with this better quality.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so that there you go. Two of us have predicted England wins. I'm quite sure Anmol will also predict England win, and England.
Yeah. What were your scorelines again?
It was 2-1 or so I said, and Sejal says 3-1. If you can give your prediction, Adi, we can wrap this up and we can go watch the match.
Yes, right on cue. So I'm all 3-1 along with Sejal. Thanks everyone who's tuned in to watch and listen. Sorry
I
for the
promise
technical
we'll get
difficulties.
better. I promise we'll get better.
Yes, we will get better. But yeah, no, I hope that this was a good first attempt from us. And yeah, everyone enjoy the match. Thanks for bearing with us. Bye.
Bye.